another firing that happened. Craig Berube goes down swinging.
Yeah. Not that shocking.
So someone asked me about it today at work too. They're like, hey, like, was this expected? Are you shocked? I'm like, I am in no way shocked. But if you like asked me last night, will Berube be fired this week? I would have been like, probably not. I don't know.
Right. The one question I have to have is like, what were the real expectations coming into the season? At the same time, like they just on so many nights,
the roster
stretching back. Yeah, I mean, and they've got some players, but
that is a flawed roster.
There, I don't love the construction at all. Like they've got some guys there that are real players. Like we saw last year, like Thomas, we saw Kyrou do their thing. And I mean, fucking Vucinovic is so good. Like that guy is unbelievable. But the back end is a problem. And I'm sorry, one of the things that I looked at is like, well, what are you like? Why he had a decent stretch? Did they really need to go multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract on Nick Leddy when they brought him in? Like, did they really have to do that? And their back end is just so weird. Those contracts. There's just so many guys on like 6x6s. It's crazy.
The patch jobs on this roster, right? When they should have done like a true teardown. Like you got your cup. You have leniency to go do that. Instead, they tried to do like the retool on the fly and they botched it so bad. And like, you know, I'll apologize in advance. Torey Krug is not your replacement for Alex Pietrangelo. I'm sorry. He doesn't even own a minivan. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
But then you've got like the moves we're talking about there too. Like they, you know, let Ryan O'Reilly go. Cool. They try and backfill him with fucking Hayes. And then you've got Nick Leddy, who you decide to extend, which I like Nick Leddy. I think like he is still a very effective defenseman in this league. I don't know that was necessarily their like top concern. They pick him over David Perron, and their power play's gone to absolute shit. And I mean, you can see it in Detroit. Perron is like carrying their power play, which is a crazy thing to say with some of the talent on that team. It's just a bizarre approach to patching holes here and there, going out and getting a guy like Kasperi Kapanen from the Penguins and basically giving free cap relief. It's just been a really weird approach. And I think this is more not that you expect to see anything different. I think this is Armstrong's last move before he gets canned because he has done a shit job with the roster. And yes, you won a cup. That only gets you so far. He's literally set the organization several years back and they've got a good prospect pool they're building up. Like we already talked about it, dude. Snuggerud with Rick. That's going to be fun. But now you're looking at it and it's like, what else are you going to pair them with? There's not a big youth movement there. They got a couple guys. It's top heavy. They could have done so much more if they didn't feel like they had to immediately be a playoff team for the next couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah. And the thing with them is like that GM's, he's survived some bad times there before. Mm-hmm. And he's always been, he's an interesting GM because, like, if you remember, like they were, I think it was either the season before or 2 seasons before they won the cup. Like they looked like, yeah, they might eke into the playoffs, and he was like, I don't give a fuck, I'm selling. And he was just like, I'm not making the playoffs to make the playoffs. And then they win the cup, come back, they still were like, this is that COVID year was the next year. It was the top 2 teams in the NHL were the Bruins and St. Louis. So they were still fine. Like they were doing great. And then it just never really like continued. And the big thing for me is like, specifically on the back end, you look at the contracts they were signing. It was like Falk 6x6, Krug 6x7. Like, I think what was Leddy, a 4x4, 4.5. But like, it's just so many of those contracts where it's like, even if there's like a limited, even if you have like full, whatever trade, it doesn't matter. If you're signing a 6x6, it doesn't fucking, and that guy's 28, 29 years old. It doesn't fucking matter if he has a no move or not. Like who in this climate too, with the salary cap the last few years, who's actually going to be like, yeah, I'll sign on. Then you don't really have to give up that much more for like, an okay guy that's on 6x6. So like, there's so many of those contracts there. I'm like, I don't know if you needed to do really any of those. And I mean, it doesn't help a guy like Parayko just can't play anymore. I mean, he can play, but he's not. He has been like for a couple years. It's been
it's a bummer.
He was
there. So good for that cup run, dude. So good.
Yeah, he was a stud that cup run. And
the
then really that was
no trade clause is just signing awful contracts, and then no one will touch them.
Yeah, it's called the St. Louis. Just like, all right, we'll just give everybody that is 28 years old. They've played about 500 games in the NHL. They've played good in peaks. Get 6x6. That's the starting point. So yeah, I mean, and that's where I'm like, I don't know. Like some of the, I don't know how much to even put on Berube, but like, I think with like the type of coach he is too, when things aren't going well, that's one where it's like, oh yeah, that's not really like once it starts going bad there with that kind of like, like the year they won, he was a player's coach. But I could like any coach after like a couple of years of just like disappointing performances, even like last year with Robert Thomas being like, well, I don't know why the fuck anyone's saying that we're not trying. Like I don't know how we're getting our effort questioned. It's like, that's not good. Like, so it didn't totally shock me, but it was like, this just, it felt like a weird time. Cause like that team, I mean, they are like brutal to watch though. I do not enjoy
Who would have thought coming into this year that the Blues for a stretch there, like were one of the playoff teams, and it was because they were being carried by Jordan Binnington. Like who had that on their bingo card? I don't think that even existed as an option, but I agree with you to an extent on the Berube stuff, but I also feel like this is not his roster. Like he coaches a certain way. His toughness got stripped from him. And yeah, there's still some tough guys there. I'm not saying that it's like a soft roster, but you look back compared to some of the teams he's had success with in St. Louis, it's just not the same.
Yeah, no, there was a big transition there of like, they've got solid players. They've got a couple of guys that are legit elite that play fucking hard. And then you've got like, it was almost the rest of the roster was like every forward you could find on any like other roster, like a middle six, but they were pieces of shit to play against. And like one of the toughest teams in the league in the back end. I think there was a couple of years ago, dude, where like the shortest guy or the smallest guy on their back end was like 6'2", 210, and they were just like murdering people. Like it was insane. And they just made like you said, like the roster obviously is kind of flipped over. It looks way different than when they won. But so, I mean, I'm not totally shocked, but I do think at some point, like how long does that Stanley Cup really save? What's his name? Armstrong.
Yeah. Which again, like I'm not saying he's a bad GM. I'm saying the way he's handled the roster since the Stanley Cup has been bad. Like he's done great things before.
Whole lot of avoidable mistakes. Whole lot of contract. Like you, I mean, no one really. At no point did you need to do this, but all right.
Yeah, but man,